realize it's been a long time since I've done a gaming or any really rant. The term rant is probably an incorrect one for me. Because a rant, I mean, I've probably done a few that are really rants. But a rant is usually just this high-pitch emotional, diatribe coming out all at once and just so perfect and everything. And the reality is most people who do rants they're doing simulated rants. I'm doing something closer to the reality of a rant, which is that I'm just talking about what I feel, what I think at the time. But I probably contemplate too much for it to be a real rant, although I'm on the edge right there, right? Because people are getting the language wrong, and the language must always be kept pure and correct. Okay, so let's make life easier. The thing I want to discuss has to do with negative reviews or negative elements to every review. I've had people mention, you don't seem to like any games. That's obviously false. If they listen to me at certain times, they can certainly see that actually I like almost all games. It's just that I aim at the negative points on every single game. And why is that? Why is that? Why do I do that? And why isn't it all valuable? I do it for the easiest reason. Because I'm lazy, right? And also because I cover so many games. I don't have the time to learn a game fully to the extent that, I've played it maybe 20, 30 times and can really give a detailed analysis on the balance, on all the things that are right about it, right? To give the true critical analysis that you need to give you a positive expression of the game that's of value, other than, well, really, I kind of liked this, Yet still the most popular out there by far. Well, I don't know. Rado's getting up there, and he only shows the games, and he's very, very well done. But to get more than just a first impression thumbs up, thumbs down, which to me is almost meaningless, you have to put some critical analysis to play. Well, putting the critical analysis to play on the positive things is almost impossible. You can show what's innovative. That's kind of cool. But every game tries to be innovative nowadays, so, that gets kind of tiresome actually, but beyond that, it's a matter of, it's not that exciting anymore that something's innovative. It's almost the expected, and in fact, it's one of my criticisms at this point against many things. Is that they're trying too hard to be innovative rather than trying to perfect something in the representation. But quite deep enough there. All right, do it the hard way. I need more flame is the problem. My flint's almost dead on this one. I'm out of flints. So it's much, much easier to look for flaws, to find things that don't feel right, historically, for example, or that are implausible. To find systems that have maybe a very obvious glitch to them, or problem that people can exploit. Even simple things like the components where they go wrong, it's just much, much more simple to find the issues that are the negatives. Trying to other things that I found. Even things that just strike you as wrong about the game, that maybe you can't really fully analyze. Things that are maybe too difficult. The AP, the tendency to force someone to get into these pathological loops of thinking, like Sorcerer did. Um, there's also simply factual things that you can kind of state about a game that are, maybe a negative for some people and not for others. And you can state them colored by your own feelings in that. My feelings usually are colored by the negative for a different reason. That's not a simplicity thing. So for example, if I say, wow, this is a really long game. Now I love long games, but I usually put it in the terms of, if you don't want to play something more than 8 hours, this probably isn't for you. Even if it doesn't look like it's going to be that long a game. If I pull out Last Chance for Victory, that's a long game. That's not going to be a complaint there. But if I pull out, I don't know, Warp War, and I say, this may never end, although that was me playing the rules wrong. 4000 AD. There's a game that could go on indefinitely, actually. And it may not look like it's going to be that long a game. That could be a serious drawback for people who might be approaching it. Conquistador looks a lot shorter than it actually is. It's at least a 10-hour game, but it kind of looks like it should only take about 4 or 5 somehow. So I try to show where the expectations are likely to be let down, or perhaps exceeded if it's a surprise as well. Anyway, the reason for that, and for any negative in general, is my feeling is most of us see a game and say, that's cool, that's cool. That's why we're looking at the game. We think it's cool, right? Gotta have. I don't have something on Polish politics, during the Confederation of the Bar era. I need that. I really do. Yeah, but now I need to know why I don't need it, right? Now, I'm not sure Eurogamers are in that same space. I have the feeling there it's about the mechanisms and how they interact and how well the game plays and all that first. This is my feeling, I'm pretty sure of it. But then when you go beyond that, it's, okay, look, when I say I have 5 Gettysburg games or 6 Gettysburg games, do I really need another? They're looking at, I have, 6 worker placement games. Am I going to really get that much off another one? Now, I don't look at that factor at all, although I kind of do to the, geez, I've got like 20-something euros. Do I really need another one? In that sense. Because I don't get all that much out of the different mechanisms. There's ones I like and ones I don't. I may love Gettysburg a great deal, but that doesn't mean that it really makes sense for me to have multiple games on the subject. I should just have a couple games at the different scales my favorites at the scales. But it's, to some extent there's a degree of nostalgia behind Terrible Swift Sword. And there's also the feeling of, now and then that may be what I'm actually in the mood for more than playing Thunder or Last Chance for Victory. That's true with Stonewall and with the other games in that series, but that's hard to convince myself of with the big guys. And Bloody April, same issue here. That's the same system, and I want to own it, but it's the same system handling all of Shiloh. Ouch, All right. So the other big thing that I see, that I'm trying to express here, and getting, off on tangents because my rants aren't really rants, is that I believe that negative reviews are just more negative focused reviews, not negative reviews. Because, for example, I feel like Fire in the Lake is a outstanding game. I have some questions, but they feel like they're all personal issues rather than anything that I can really level at the game itself. My own AP, my inability to view the board and kind of see what's going on as well. Although some of that's probably the camera. Running the camera interferes with my enjoyment to some extent. And then this weird feeling about the end of the game. And I just covered this game. These are the three things that kind of degrade my experience of it, and they might affect others, and I think it's worth pointing them all out. But as a game, I don't think the game can be looked at negatively because of it. I have a very positive feeling about Fire in the Lake and about the whole coin series, to tell you the truth. I think they're outstanding simulations. I think they're outstanding games. But I also think that there are some negative points that need to be highlighted about them. Other than the simple, yeah, this is going to take you 10 hours, that it's just a factual thing. It's really, it could be colored different ways by different people. But the problems that I had with it, I felt needed to be highlighted, even though I think I gave it an extraordinarily positive review. I've been very happy with the coin games in a lot of ways, but I'll say negative things about them. And that's the thing, some of my favorite games. All right, I got nothing negative to say about Go, because, it's the perfect game, or as close to a perfect game as you can get. And I really don't have anything negative I can say about Go, except maybe that the pieces aren't licorice, and I don't know anything that you can say against it, basically. I can look at it, Europa Universalis, Le Grand Guerre, La Révolution Française. I love AWE's games. Every single one of them has huge flaws, and every single one of them, I will say, is not as good a game as Fire in the Lake, but I love them more. Recently, when I looked at the new Founding Fathers, or the newly printed one, the older version, but it's not the Jolly Rogers edition that's more famous. I said, I think I love this game. It doesn't mean that it's a better game than some others that I don't like as much. It just shows something of my tastes and how they interact, and that the objective opinion that I have, nothing's truly objective, right? But I have an objective filter that I can put in place and say, look, I can project and see, or what I'm doing is trying to filter out the things that I think are peculiar to me, that don't particularly represent what I could, if I tried to state what makes a good game, I don't think this would pass muster as well as some other games do. So a lot of the things that I really like are very flawed. I don't think Founding Fathers is very flawed. I think it's a pretty good game, actually. But the fact that I love it doesn't mean that it's as good a game as some of these others that are out there. On the other hand, something like Dominant Species, I look at objectively. I know people enjoy it, but man, I just can't see the negatives. When I try to compare the negatives against any projected positives, the only projected positive I get is that you have an interesting puzzle here. And that's just something I don't really appreciate that much. And I certainly don't compare that to the other things. So it's very hard for me to say that's a good game, because I think the burden of counting is just too high for something that gives no simulation value. And there are plenty of interesting puzzles out there as games. I don't see anything terribly more intriguing about Dominant Species in that sense than, maybe 60% of the games that I own. Right? Fire in the Lake gives a more interesting puzzle a more complex puzzle to solve than Dominant Species does, and it does everything else right too from that objective standpoint. But from the subjective standpoint, I find my flaws in it anyway. And so I think that both my laziness, there are a few games that I can talk about with some limited authority. I've always been a game slut, right? You know, that means I have a lot of experience of games, but it's all very shallow. So even games I've played a lot of, like Titan or Britannia, or Pax Britannica, or Empires of the Middle Ages. You know, just to show that it's not all kind of that Ameritrash type stuff that I played heavily, or Acquire. These games I can probably speak to not with